Hi, my name is Sonia Crittenden, and I am Director of Client Services and Education at Cereset. And with me today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Bob Parsons, the original founder and CEO of GoDaddy. Mr. Parsons is also a successful entrepreneur, an active philanthropist, and proud former U.S. Marine. He is also a longtime Cereset client and advocate, and today he's going to share with us his own Cereset experience. You and I met back in 2018 when you came to Cereset, and I worked with you as your tech coach. And when I worked with you, you told me a lot about your experience as a U.S. Marine in Vietnam. So I thought I knew your story pretty well until I read your memoir. And this is Mr. Parsons' memoir. It's called A Fire in the Hole. And I was surprised reading this, just how challenging your life has been from the get-go, from early childhood on. So, and a lot of the experiences you faced were so traumatic and difficult. Many people would have just given up, but you pushed forward. What motivated you to just keep going when a lot of people would just give in?
Well, it seemed to me that my options weren't many back then, and most of the time it was either, certainly in Vietnam, it was either push forward and do what you needed to do, or say hello to St. Peter. That was what I did, and I came out much better for the whole experience. But when I was a kid, that's just the way I was raised, I guess. I mean, my parents, I was most certainly abused as a kid. My parents never physically abused me. They abused themselves. And I watched it in the sense that my mother had a couple nervous breakdowns. None of them were treated. She would bang her head into the wall and, pull clumps of hair out of her head and, run around the house like she was nuts. And I watched that, and I always wondered, why was Mom that way? And of course, I never really knew, but all I knew is, I loved her, and whatever I could do to help her, I did. And I carried that type of thought process forward in most everything I did.
It's amazing. You've always been very open about your struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder and your journey through that process. But at some point in time, you were ready to look for options for help. What was that turning point for you?
Well, the big turning point was, believe it or not, my daughter, Jessica, was in an automobile accident. And she lives up in Portland, and, she was a very careful driver and, was T-boned by somebody that ran a stop sign and was speeding and all that, and really just rocked her. I mean, to the point where she was so traumatized by that event, she didn't want to leave the house. She certainly didn't want to drive again. She just would cry, and, and I talked to her about, maybe you can, start seeing a psychologist. And she sang, she went and seen two of them. Neither of them seemed to help her. The cure that both of them had was very long term.
Yeah.
And then the next key event, I have asthma. I went to get an asthma shot. Mm-hmm. And while I was waiting for, my turn to, see the pulmonologist, I picked up one of the magazines you see in a doctor's office. And the one that I seen had an article about Cereset. Back then it was called Brain State Technologies.
Right, yeah.
And, it talked about some of the amazing things that it could do. And then I called my daughter and I said, Jessica, would you like to try this? She says, Dad, I will try anything. After her first session, she just didn't, quite know what to expect. Mm-hmm. But her second session, there was a marked improvement in her. I mean, she seemed like she was her old self again.
Right.
And then I think it was a schedule of 4 appointments. And so after the 4th, I had never seen her so happy in my whole life. She was, and I guess her whole life too. But I mean, she was just a better person. I mean, so happy, and what a difference that made. I mean, it totally got rid of it for her. Mm-hmm. And so she's that way today. I mean, it has never changed for her. So I went ahead talked to you, I think it was,
Yeah.
about, can I start, this for me? It was the same sort of thing. It helped me tremendously. I mean, did it fix everything I had to deal with? No, but that was a pretty big laundry list.
Yeah, right.
But, it showed me that I could be better. I didn't have to suffer from that, that PTSD like I had been. And so I started exploring other things, and so that's pretty much the story. So without Cereset and my daughter's accident, none of that I think would have happened.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So having someone work with your brain or look at your brain can be a little intimidating. Did your daughter's experience help you feel more confident with giving that a try or giving that a go?
She didn't have a real hard time with it. I mean, maybe just a little bit, in the sense that, what you have when you walk into a room when the lights are out before you turn them on, a little bit of apprehension.
Yeah.
The way Cereset manages it, it is like, you sit in this room, it's in the dark, but it's not pitch dark. I mean, you can, stuff is visible in there. It's non-invasive. You listen to it through earbuds. I guess a reproduction of your brain waves sorted by musical notes.
Yeah.
And you pick the instrument, right? And you have some sensors on your head, which brain waves go into the computer, right? And then are played back as musical notes. I mean, it's instant. There's nothing to think about. Matter of fact, it doesn't matter what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's the beauty.
And so, as you listen to this, the most common reaction that I found is that you go to sleep.
Yeah.
And if you go to sleep, it works even better. And so, it's one of those things where it is so simple, you can't screw this up. And the work in fixing the issues that are implicit in your brain or your mind, however you want to call it, right, are orchestrated and done by your brain or your mind.
Right.
All right. So there's nobody telling you what to do. There's nobody's experience that's helping you change. It's just what your brain and your mind does.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Based on the input from your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes all the pressure out of it, essentially.
Exactly.
Since experiencing Cereset, you have referred a lot of your family and friends and colleagues to Cereset. What have you observed as kind of like a third party watching your friends and family go through this process, as far as what you've seen changes in them, their experiences?
Well, I have, and this is no exaggeration, referred over 100 people there.
Yeah.
A lot of them are veterans or people that were on the police force, which is, being a police person is a very stressful job.
Yes, absolutely.
And the same thing with being a first responder. We've kind of made donations to them, and they have brought people to Cereset with great response. So by and large, I mean, it just works. There was this young kid, he played football for San Diego State, and he had a concussion followed by a concussion followed by a concussion. And this was back before the protocols. And he told me he was to the point where he couldn't even talk. He couldn't talk. His mother was crying and this and that. After one session at Cereset, he could talk again.
Yeah.
And
That's amazing.
This is no bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What advice would you give others who might be considering Cereset sessions and just not quite sure about it yet?
Don't you want to know what it would feel like to not carry the cross that you're carrying, which is what's got you thinking about taking Cereset? To me, it is the most obvious answer. If you talk to me about it, I'll have you at Cereset in an hour. But, there's no downside. It's all upside. And, man, I just do it. One of the things I remember saying to you after I had my first full treatment with Cereset, you asked me, well, how do you feel? And I said, I feel so good. And I said, I've never had this feeling before. So keep in mind, my PTSD comes from a wild and crazy childhood.
Yeah.
And then that followed immediately by the Vietnam War.
Right.
And then growing up in East Baltimore, I mean, I was robbed at gunpoint. One guy was going to shoot me, couldn't pull the trigger. I mean, all sorts of stuff like that. For me to be treated at Cereset and have it done in such a way that, I mean, I just felt like it's just a burden been lifted from me.
Yeah.
It's, like I've been, like I was in a cabin with nice, fresh pine air, and it was great. And I still had a long road to go, but man, Cereset was a big step forward for me. So it was wonderful. One of the things that I do is I make it a point to tell everybody that's in a situation that could use Cereset about the benefits that to be found there. To date, I don't invest in any organization that treats PTSD, and the reason I don't is because when I have something to say and something to tell people about different services, Cereset being one of them, I can't really say what I have on my mind and what I know to be true, because if I was investing, people would say,
right.
Well, he's doing it because he's making money, or the FDA would say he's made statements that we haven't proved to be true, even though I've seen them work.
Right.
So that's one of the big things that I do. Now, one of the organizations that I have talked about Cereset a lot is the 100 Club. And the 100 Club is an organization that provides benefits for first responders that need it, firefighters, policemen, ambulance drivers, paramedics, that sort of thing. And since then, they have sent a number of their people over to Cereset. And I see the letters that these people write. They're almost heartbreaking. You want to break a tear, just to read it, because they tell you, how hard, things were, and now how much better things are. And see, and what I learned so much is when you help an individual, be it a veteran or a first responder who's carrying a cross, you help their family and their kids too.
Oh, for sure. It
Yeah.
has such a wide-ranging impact.
Yeah,
on them.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing that, I do, and I'm proud to do, and I'm going to continue to do. And I'm your biggest fan.
Oh, thank you. We love that. We love having you as our biggest fan.
There you go. Well, that's not going to change.
So again, this is Mr. Parsons' book. It's called Fire in the Hole, The Untold Story of My Traumatic Life and Explosive Success. Just strongly recommend this to anyone who is struggling with stress or PTSD and just needs some encouragement and some hope. This is an amazing story. At times, it's just almost seems unreal. The situations that you had to face were just unbelievable. And then to see what has all come from that is just incredible. So it's a very inspiring, encouraging story. Strongly recommend that you pick it up.
Well, thank you, Sonia. I sure appreciate it.